to the MicroBrewr podcast. Here's your host, Joe Shellerud.
All right, and welcome to the third podcast. I'm your host, Joe Shellerud, and for MicroBrewr, we're the place where if you're looking at starting up a brewery or want to take yours to the next level, hopefully we can help you out. So first off, I just want to say I hope you enjoy the little intro song. Just a little thing about me is that I play guitar, drums, and so I just kind of whipped that up when I was trying to come up with the podcast itself. I had to say that I did cut out the 10-minute guitar solo that I played after. You probably didn't want to listen to that, but I had some fun playing it. But anyway, on to the rest of the podcast. So this podcast, we've got Sarah Zomper from Adelberts Brewery located in Austin, Texas. And like everybody else in the brewing industry, Sarah was just awesome to talk to and had a ton of great information. So in the podcast, we talk about topics like marketing, distribution, branding, social media, and pretty much everything else in between. So at this point, just grab your favorite local brew, sit back, and enjoy. All right, well, on the podcast today, we want to welcome Sarah Zomper to the MicroBrewr podcast from Adelberts Brewery in Austin, Texas. And Sarah, thanks for joining.
Glad to be here.
So, Sarah, I was wondering, for people who aren't familiar with Adelberts, if you could give us an overview of the brewery.
Yeah, so we're a Belgian-style brewery based in Austin, Texas. So we do a couple different things that not other breweries in town or Texas are really doing, and that's we use a lot of Belgian yeast that follow a lot of traditional Belgian recipes. We propagate our own yeast at the brewery. We do a decoction mash, and we bottle condition. So we've got some cool things going on that lead to really great flavor profiles for our beers. We currently make 9 different beers with a couple more coming online this year.
All right. And so what do you do to get people who aren't familiar with Adelberts into the brewery and trying out your beer?
We do some different things. We're very active on social media, so Facebook, Twitter, dabbling into Google+. That's our main format to communicate with people who are familiar with the brand, who have bought our beer. We have food trucks out at the brewery when we're open for our tours and tastings on Friday and Saturday. We try and just really have a really good personal experience when you come to the brewery. So you're usually getting to meet either myself or Scott or one of our brewers. Get to meet them. We do a walk through the brewery. And a lot of what we try and do is even replicate the experience you get at the brewery on our bottles. So every beer is actually named after our namesake. Our brewery is named after George Adelbert Hovey, Scott's brother. And so on the bottle, so not only is the brewery named after him, but our beers are named after his wild and crazy life stories. And so on the bottle, we describe not only the beer, but also the story behind that beer and where we came up with it from. So that even if you can't make it to the brewery, if you don't live in Austin, you can still experience a little bit of the stories behind our brewery and that specific beer you're having.
Yeah, so do you have any good stories that you could share about any of the names or how the brewery got named?
Yeah. Well, so the name for the brewery is named after Scott's brother, Del. Del passed away in 2000, but while he was alive, he lived life to the fullest, traveled around the world, had been active in the Peace Corps, and he'd always come home with these wild and crazy stories. So when Scott decided to start a brewery, he thought, well, what better way to pay homage to my brother than name the brewery after him? And then, funny enough, he actually saw a Dos Equis commercial for the most interesting man in the world, and he was watching this commercial thinking, who is this made-up character who has nothing on my brother, who's a real person? So all the beers are named after Del's life stories. Probably hands down the best one is Naked Nun. It's named in honor of a time when Del was traveling in Colombia with the Peace Corps, and he went to go see an old cathedral one day and thought, it's beautiful weather, I'm just going to walk back. Well, back then they highly recommended you don't walk alone and on back roads, and Del, being the adventurer he does this anyways, and sure enough, he gets robbed by bandits, and back then when bandits robbed you, they didn't just take your wallet and keys, they took your shoes, clothes, underwear, everything. So he was left naked as the day he's born, walking down this road, and he thinks, well, crud, what am I going to do? So he heads back to the cathedral because near it was a convent, but he didn't want to scare the sisters with his nudity, so he hides behind a flock of sheep that they had there. And so he's hiding behind these sheep and starts flagging the sisters down, going, "Sisters, sisters, will you help me? I've been mugged." And we're pretty sure they had a really good laugh, and then they were nice enough to give him a blanket and put him on a bus back to where he was staying. So he was naked, the nuns weren't, but Naked Gringo didn't have the same ring to it.
That's awesome. And that's one of the things that I've seen looking up your brewery is that all the reviews, they all go towards the tour and how personal it was. You're taking time out of your busy schedule where you could be making more beer, doing other things for advertising. How much do you think the tour really adds to building those loyal fans?
It is amazing to me how every week, last night, for example, we had a quote-unquote snowstorm in Austin, which if you're from Texas, you know that how big of a joke that is. We had ice temporarily and thought it was going to be a slow night, and lo and behold, we have about 100 people, 90% of which are all new faces who'd never been to the brewery. So having that experience and having people be able to come in has been really great, and it just impresses me how every weekend, between Friday and Saturday, how many new faces we get. People really enjoy the personal experience that they get here, and I try and spend a lot of time talking with people, asking how they heard about us, and word of mouth is the biggest thing, because people will come in, and the number one feedback I probably get is, "I liked your beer before I came in, but now that I came here and saw where you make it and heard the story behind it, I love your beer." And so it's fans like that that are really the word of mouth kind of, people out there who are buying our beer, and then when they have fun at the brewery, they come back and bring all their friends that live here, or they bring their family when they come in town. And so we try and really keep that momentum going. And so if we have new people who come in, say, "Hey, I had no clue you were here," tell them, "Come back, bring a couple friends, and I'll let you in for free because you bring 4 friends," and then they bring friends, and then that's the more people who not only have learned about our brand but are interested in our beer when they're out at the store or in a local bar.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome that each of the names of the beers has a story behind it, so you can build that personal connection. It's not just a random name, but you've got this story where people can really connect to Adelberts and all the crazy adventures that he had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you were talking about that you have food trucks that come when you're doing the different brewery tours. Do you call different food trucks to get that set up, or how's that work?
Yeah, so we started to get a good enough crowd that we really wanted to be able to provide food and make it a little bit more of an evening or a day activity than just show up, drink a beer, and leave. So we reached out to some food trucks. There's some great associations or groups of food trucks here, and said, "Hey, we've got this great spot. We're open for 4 hours, and we've got hungry people." And so we've partnered with about 5 different trucks, and we rotate them through different times of the month. We always add new trucks. Some people approach us when they're new trucks who are just trying to get a reputation for themselves, and other ones who just friends of the food trucks we work with want to come out. And it's fun for us because we always give the food trucks beer and ask, and either just for fun for them to enjoy, but also encouraging them to cook with. Because another big thing on our bottles is we put recommended food pairings with them. And so it's fun also, like one of the food trucks we work with, Guac and Roll, they're making a beer cheese sauce for their nachos and their tamales, which is out of this world with the dancing monks. It gives a nice complex flavor to their cheese sauce. And one other truck that's been with us since the day we had our first food truck, Oyama, they do their carnitas. They marinate the meat with triple B. So it's fun to see how beer is not just something that you can only drink, but you can really cook with it, see how it improves the flavors, and then pair it with dishes. So it's a lot of fun for us, and I'd be lying if I said it's not probably the best thing we get when somebody says, "Hey, I made these cookies with your beer in them. You want to try them?" And we're thinking, "Yeah, bring them by." So
yeah, that's awesome. So I take it, since you've got the brewery tours and looking at your site, so you decided not to go the brew pub route, and just wanted to get your perspective on that.
I mean, for us, it's just not the right route. Our long-term plan is to become a nationwide distributed brewery and retain ownership. And so there's certain limitations with the brew pub status that just inhibit that long-term growth. There's also some restrictions on the amounts that you can produce and sell and self-distribute. And we're already either going beyond that limit monthly or just shy of it, so we don't want to run into those restrictions for just our long-term plan. And there's other little things that we do right now. We have excess capacity, so we'll brew whiskey wort for a couple different distilleries in town, and brew pub status doesn't allow you to do that. But we really like working with those guys. It's a nice kind of symbiotic relationship because we brew whiskey for them, and then we get access to some of their flavors like Treaty Oak. They gave us one of their old gin barrels, so we're having a lot of fun aging some Philosophizer in those barrels. The Spirit Texas Distillery gives us their rum chips that they use in their Pecan Street rum, and we use that to age our Flying Monk. So there's certain things that we really like to do and have fun with that for us, a brew pub would restrict us from having that, kind of pursuing those opportunities. But it does work for other breweries in town that have different plans. Some people want to be solely on site, have food and beer and it's only there, and it's more about being at that site than actually buying it or enjoying it at home. And that works for some people. It's just not the route we're wanting to go. So we'll just, hopefully eventually the beer laws will catch up in Texas to similar to how they are in other states where, there's not as much of a line between what you can do as a brew pub or brewery and all of that. But until we get there, we're happy with the way things are going overall.
Yeah, and that sounds like a great strategy, kind of contract brewing out, so then you've got that extra room to expand if you need it.
Yeah.
But at the time, you're still using it for other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, that's great. So you distribute throughout Texas, and I wanted to see how you set up that, how you found that distributor to get your beer out.
So we're currently in Houston, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, El Paso, Corpus Christi area, and then we do also have some out of state. We're in New Mexico, South Florida, and downstate New York. And then actually in a month from now, in February, we'll be shipping our first shipment of beer to California. And our growth has been a good steady pace. Obviously, our first market was Austin. That's where we're based. That's our home market. So we self-distribute here still. In Dallas, we self-distributed until about 6 months ago, or just shy of that. And we brought on a distributor up there, which just came highly recommended as Houston and Dallas and these much larger markets we can sell to them, but you can't always give it the attention that it needs and really sell as much as you could if you just are trying to do it all from Austin. So that's our pursuit, or our direction in Texas, is we want to find good distributors. Everybody we've worked with, either in South and West Texas, Florida and New York, they're either a combination of connections that we've had or people we've sought out. But we're kind of selective with the distributors we pick. We don't just want to be a random name in an arsenal of brands that somebody's carrying. So we try and focus on partnering with people where maybe one of our distributors was mainly a specialty wine distributor and wanted to get in the beer, and so they're only carrying a handful of more high-end beer lines that they are selling. So we're really featured in that portfolio. And other ones, where our bottles are bigger bottles. They're 750 milliliters. So we really want people who are going to, when they're selling our beer, they're selling that format. They also understand the stories and the food pairings behind the beer. So it's not just, I'm going to call an account and I'm going to drop off a case and that's that and we sold it. It's really about trying to educate our customers on our beer as well. And that kind of goes back to all the information we put on the bottles, because we want to give everyone who sees our beer, who sells it, who buys it from a distributor and then is turning around to selling it to a consumer, we want them to all really understand the brand, become fans of it, and want to sell through more of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So take like New York, for example. So you found a distributor up there that you thought could really help promote your beer and get that out into different places that people would want it. How much, so you talk to them and help to educate them. Outside of that, do you do any advertising, or is it just organic growth at that point?
Mainly it's organic growth for us. At our current size, we don't have an advertising budget. So a lot of it is organic growth. We try and create any materials that we can to help support sales and help support our distributors, whether that's we have a beer business card. So every beer has its own card that distributors can hand out to people, or if they're doing tasting somewhere, we can give that to somebody so that they can remember, oh, I really love Triple B. That's the bottle I'm going to go buy. As well as we do a really cool one-pager sheet that describes every beer. We have one-pagers that go through the color, aroma, taste, body, and finish for every beer, recommended food pairings. So we're trying to build up at least the resources to really help people sell through. But as far as advertising, it's mainly local, social media based. We post our openings on event calendars. But yeah, it's mainly here. We sell T-shirts and things, so it's a lot of grassroots marketing for us.
Okay. Yeah, and that's great, the different things that you're putting together for the distributors to make educating them as easy as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So with you were talking that all your beers are in 750 milliliter bottles, and I see you've got the cork, and if I look at the whole selection of beers, I can tell that they're all from the same brand. How big of a deal do you think is branding your beer to getting the sales for when you're, I mean, there's 2,700 different craft breweries out there, and making yourself stand out?
It's definitely an important element. The first, I think, 6 months of business, there was an initial label that really wasn't selling very well because Scott knows I say this, but he's an engineer. He doesn't have the marketing view, and so him and Greg really came up with a label that worked for them but wasn't visually appealing. And so once we rebranded just a little over a year ago, the beer started selling through so much faster, and a lot of that is the look and feel. As sad as it is, our original label actually had an old feel to it. It was a tan background with brown on it. It was very simple. And unfortunately, a lot of people just weren't visually appealed. You know, they just would walk past it. The new one has a color for every beer. It has a lot more of a visual layout, and so that's really helped the sell-through of the beer. So the look and feel of your brand is really important. But you really want to make sure it resonates back with what your core brand is. There's other brands out there that have more playful, whimsical looks, and you got to look at what your core value of your brand is, what types of beers you're making, and then work with your branding from that point forward.
Sarah, when you're doing your tours, how many people would you say are not your traditional craft beer aficionados? They're your traditional light beer drinkers that are coming in. And what do you do to get them interested in beer with a little more flavor than your typical Miller Lite?
It's probably, a good 50-50 split when we have people in who have either are really big beer nerds that love traveling to go to breweries, and then other guys who their friend just dragged them along and they came, and it's a lot of fun to change somebody's view on beer. I like to joke that Naked Nun and Triple B are our converting beers, because I'll have people who've come in that say, oh, I only drink wine, I hate beer, don't even try. And so usually introducing them to the citrus and coriander notes of Naked Nun, they're thinking, oh, wow, this is light, refreshing. I'm not getting that bitter hop bite that I'm used to with most beers, or it doesn't taste like water. And then Triple B, which has a little bit of the spice and alcohol notes to it, a lot of wine drinkers really resonate with that one as well. So it's a lot of fun to show people that beer doesn't have to taste like kind of nasty, mildly hopped water, but that it also doesn't have to taste like a bitter hop bomb, that there is other beers out there. A lot of people who have never had Belgian beer come in, they try it, and they think, oh my God, this is what I've been missing in my beer palate. I've tried beer and thought, now I've tried this and I would order this. I want to buy this. So it's a lot of fun for us to help convert people over.
Yeah. And as the craft beer industry continues to grow, more people continue to come over. Speaking of the craft industry as a whole, from your perspective, do you still see it growing within the next year or two?
Oh, yeah. I think we'll definitely see a good amount of growth over the next probably 2, maybe even 3 years. There's going to be, two different sides of the coin. You'll see people who just have money and a couple recipes that just can throw money at it and open a brewery. And then you're going to see people who have outstanding recipes and it's a labor of love and they've spent years and years developing it and they're going to have some really awesome beer. And so we'll see a lot of growth, a lot of influx. I can't remember the exact study, but there's several different professors that have done studies on the amount of breweries per capita that can be supported. And Austin and Texas in general is nowhere near that capacity that the market can support. So we'll definitely see a lot of growth, and then eventually, as with any industry, you're going to see then the big boom, and then we'll kind of max out, and then those people who aren't making great beer will eventually fizzle out, and the ones who are making really good beer and great products, they'll stay in the industry for the long haul.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because like every other industry, this one's got to reach a peak sometime. It might not be anytime soon, but getting those great recipes, getting the quality out there, building that customer base, I think that's just huge for when we finally do hit that point like you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so as we go forward, any advice for anybody who's thinking of starting a brewery right now?
Definitely do your research. Scott homebrewed for a long time. He refined his recipes, and then he worked, he met other brewers, and he even worked with a brewery consultant before he opened the business. His biggest thing for finding investors and was creating his business plan, and that involved a lot of research. So there's a lot more to running a brewery than just brewing beer, and so that's something to always be aware of, that it is running a business. If Scott had his way, he would be brewing all day, and if I had my way, I'd be running a tasting room 24 hours a day and just be interacting with people. But unfortunately, we've got to, make hard decisions. You have to order materials, you have to spend money and do a lot of things that aren't always fun in an office, but that are part of running a business. So research and preparation, and a good thing is also knowing your skill set and what you can do, and then what you should hire people to do. So I think a lot of that stuff is really what will help set someone up, at least, and be moving in a good direction to start to look at to open a brewery.
Yeah, that's all great advice. So, Sarah, for anybody who wants to find out more about Adelberts, where should they go?
We have our website. It's adelbertsbeer.com, ADELBERTS beer.com. We also have a Facebook page, Adelberts Brewery, and Twitter is Adelberts Beer. So that's the main places to connect with us, and come by and stop by the brewery anytime. We're open Wednesdays and Thursdays for happy hour, and then Fridays and Saturdays are when we do our big tours and tastings.
And for anybody listening, what we'll do is we'll put together show notes for this session, so we'll have links to all the sites that Sarah just talked about. So, Sarah, I really appreciate you coming on, and next time I'm in Texas, I'm definitely stopping by.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, you have a great day, and thanks again.
Thank you.
And I just want to give one more thanks to Sarah from Adelberts Brewery, and make sure if you're in the Texas area to go for a brewery tour or find them in your local liquor store to help support them out. Great thing about helping people is that you get to drink beer in the process, so it's all good. If you want to find any of the links that Sarah talked about, we've also got them in the show notes at microbrewer.com/session3. So it's microbrewer.com/session and then the number 3. So one other thing, if you're getting some value out of the podcast, one thing that I would really appreciate, if you could go into iTunes and give the podcast a rating. What this does is it really helps us to get us up in the search results and gets the word out for the podcast. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. And then if you get a chance to share this with your friends, again, I'd really appreciate it. And if there's anything that I can do for you to return the favor, definitely let me know. So until next time, make sure you support your local breweries, and we will see you on the next podcast.
Thanks for listening to the MicroBrewr Podcast with Joe Shellerud. We'll see you right here next time at microbrewer.com.